The auditorium was packed every row, filled with proud parents, teary grandparents, siblings holding signs. My name was called Last Dr. Linnea Voss, Highest Honors. Applause erupted, echoing through the high ceilings as I walked across the stage. I held my diploma tight, fingers trembling, not from nerves but from the silence I knew was waiting for me off stage. I turned instinctively, scanning the seats where my family should have been. 2 rows near the front were empty, untouched programs still resting on the chairs. My classmates waved at cameras posed between bouquets. I stood on the side, adjusting my gown, smiling for strangers who offered polite congratulations. That morning, my parents had texted from Manhattan. "We're so proud of you," they wrote attached to a photo of Seth in a tailored suit cutting a cake that read, "Congratulations, VP Voss." My mother's message followed a minute later. "Try not to feel bad if Seth's news overshadows yours." Timing is everything. I didn't cry. I had stopped doing that years ago. Instead, I took a deep breath and walked past the press wall where graduates snapped photos with their families. A woman from the registrar's office stopped me, hugging me tightly. "We've never had someone finish with your defense score," she whispered. "Your advisor said you made the committee rethink everything." I thanked her. Then I walked alone to the car I had borrowed from a friend, sat behind the wheel, and let the applause I didn't hear fade behind me. There was no ride home, no dinner reservation, no gold-lettered card. But there was something else. There was a strange, steady certainty growing in my chest as I turned the keys and pulled away from the campus for the last time. I used to think love came in the form of attention. So when Seth won his first middle school debate tournament and my parents threw him a surprise dinner, I convinced myself they just hadn't noticed the art competition I'd quietly won the same week. He had a certificate and a photo with the mayor. I had a ribbon folded into the back of my notebook. It wasn't that they didn't love me, they just didn't understand me. Seth wanted what they wanted: status, performance, measurable success. He asked for golf lessons. I asked for more library hours. He spent weekends at tennis camps and mock trial tournaments chauffeured by our father's paralegal. I spent mine painting on plywood scraps in the garage, wiping my hands on old SAT prep books. By high school, the difference wasn't subtle anymore. Seth got internships at firms I'd only read about. Networking, they called it, though it was really just our father calling in favors. I worked after-school shifts at a bookstore, saving every dollar for college applications they said were a waste of time. When I was accepted into a summer ethics program in Vermont, my mother said, "Still chasing fantasy." My father added, "Dreams don't pay the mortgage, Linnea." They signed the permission form reluctantly, then forgot to ask how it went. Later, when I got the scholarship letter from Cambridge Full Ride, merit-based international cohort, my mother looked at it, skimmed the letterhead, and said, "So, more school." My father didn't say anything at all. He was too busy checking the LinkedIn update Seth had just posted, accepted into junior leadership rotation at Bryson and Tate. It had 300 likes by dinner. I packed my own suitcase, booked my own flight, said goodbye to no one in particular. At orientation in the UK, I remember watching other students call home, laughing with parents on video chat, sharing their schedules. I had sent a text when I landed. No one replied until the next afternoon. "Don't forget your coat," my mother wrote. "It rains a lot there." I saved the message not because it meant something, but because it was all there was. And I learned then, love doesn't always arrive. Sometimes you just keep moving without it. The dining room hadn't changed. Same oak table, same silver candelabras that only came out for holidays. Same fireplace mantel crowded with Seth's framed milestones, his MBA acceptance, his wedding portrait, even a photo of him shaking hands with the mayor after some housing development ribbon cutting. I never saw a single picture of me in that room. They had invited me out of obligation. That much was clear when my mother seated me on the far end, 2 chairs down from the neighbor's daughter and across from a man I didn't recognize. Seth arrived late naturally and was greeted with applause like he'd just returned from war. He closed the Lakeside deal, my father beamed. Added $12 million in assets to the portfolio. I smiled. I was happy for him. I always had been. But when I tried to share that I'd recently returned from a policy summit in Nairobi, my mother blinked slowly and asked, "Is that near Morocco?" No one responded when I clarified. The conversation had already shifted to Seth's new condo in Arlington. Later, while I was helping clear the dishes, I overheard my father in the den, laughing with two of his colleagues. She's still in that humanitarian stuff, whatever that means. At least Seth makes moves we can quantify. I didn't cry. I folded the napkins, put the leftover stuffing in containers. I loaded the dishwasher like I had after Seth's high school graduation party when our mother had told him, "You're the pride of this family." I'd been standing right beside her. When I finally left, I hugged no one. My ride to the airport was an Uber I called from the sidewalk. I looked back once, just a glance at the windows warm with lights and laughter. Then I turned away. By the time my flight landed in D.C., I had deleted every photo from the night. 2 days later, I submitted my final report on urban displacement patterns during transitional regimes. The lead strategist asked if I wanted to speak on it at a regional conference. I said yes, and I didn't tell anyone back home. Not because they wouldn't care, because I no longer needed them to. The invitation to join the advisory board came in the middle of a rainy Tuesday. I was eating cold leftovers in the break room when my supervisor forwarded the email, CCing me with a note. "They're watching you. Good work." It was a pilot coalition 10 nations, 5 NGOs, and a rotating advisory seat to monitor refugee resettlement programs. My task wasn't glamorous. It meant long nights reading inconsistent policy drafts, comparing legislative loopholes, tracking funding trails. But I loved every second of it. When my first report was cited in a UN session, I didn't even know. A colleague texted me a photo of the screen. My name looked foreign under the Geneva lights printed in Helvetica between 2 delegates arguing over implementation metrics. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I put my phone down and kept working. At home, the emails kept coming always, in group threads, always themed. Seth just bought a lake house. Seth's wife is expecting. Seth was nominated for the Regional Finance Board. I never replied. They never asked how I was doing, and that silence started to feel less like a wound and more like a wall I was learning to decorate. I rented a small apartment near DuPont Circle. The walls were thin and the heating hissed in winter, but it was mine. I stacked books on the windowsill, filled the fridge with exactly what I liked, set reminders to call the people who actually noticed when I was gone. When the keynote invitation arrived, Global Migration and Equity Forum in Geneva, I read it 3 times before it sank in. They wanted me to speak, not as someone's assistant, not as a stand-in, as myself. I booked the flight the same day, used my miles to upgrade to business class, and when I packed, I chose a black suit I'd bought with my first full paycheck. Understated clean lines, no label. The morning I left, my mother sent another update. Seth just got invited to a finance gala. Front page coverage. I stared at the subject line for a moment. Then, I archived the thread, zipped my suitcase, and stepped into the rain without an umbrella. The luncheon was held in a private gallery just off 14th Street, all minimalist furniture and catered plates arranged like exhibits. I wasn't supposed to attend. My colleague had dropped out last minute, and they asked if I could step in. I nearly declined. Geneva had only been 2 weeks ago, and I was still recovering from the high of it. But something told me to go. Miles Granger introduced himself with a firm handshake and a glass of water instead of wine. "You're Voss," he said, scanning my name badge. "You gave the closing keynote in Geneva. The bit about equity not being charity that stuck with me." I thanked him, unsure what else to say. He was older than I expected, sharp-eyed, thoughtful in a way that felt earned. He asked smart questions about policy fatigue, funding gaps, community-led reform. I answered carefully, aware I was being studied. Halfway through the meal, he leaned in and asked almost offhand, "Do you happen to know a man named Seth Voss?" My fork paused. I smiled. "That's my brother." Miles blinked, then chuckled. "Small world." He interviewed at our fund last fall. Bright guy, great credentials. But a little eager. Talks more than he listens. I took a sip of water to steady myself. That sounds about right. He didn't press further, and I didn't offer more. We shifted back to climate financing, but something had shifted in the air around me. Something quiet, but seismic. Not just that he knew Seth, but that he had met us both and remembered me. Afterward, as we walked out beneath a gray sky, Miles handed me his card. "I'll be in touch," he said. "There's a seat opening up on one of our strategy boards. Would love to hear your thoughts." I tucked the card into my coat pocket and thanked him again. That night, I sat at my kitchen table turning the card over in my hand while my phone buzzed beside me. Another family thread Seth featured in Business Today. I didn't open it. I just looked at the name printed in silver ink across the card, Miles Granger, Senior Partner. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the last hiring list I'd reviewed. The folder landed on my desk late on a Thursday, marked urgent in red ink across the tab. It was the quarterly hiring slate for strategy consultants, one of the last steps before onboarding approvals. I flipped through names, making mental notes until I saw his. Voss Seth. He had applied for a senior advisory role on the international strategy team. The same department I had helped design the metrics for. The same space I'd spent 3 years building from scratch. I didn't react, not out loud. I just set the folder aside and stared out the window for a long minute. His resume was exactly what I expected, polished, confident, packed with keywords. He'd clearly done his research, but under global impact experience, the examples were superficial. Regional sales expansion, internal training modules, nothing substantive. Later that evening, a message popped up from my mother. The subject line was simple, "Help your brother." The body of the email was worse. "He really needs this, sweetie. You know how important this is to your father. Can't you just help for once? You've always been the sensitive one." I closed the tab. No reply, no hesitation. The next morning I reviewed the folder again. Most names were approved with minor comments, but when I got to Seth's, I drew a single line through the margin and typed the rejection note for HR to finalize. Before I sent it, I paused, then added one sentence at the bottom, an addition I knew they'd let stand. Sometimes degrees do matter. I hit send and returned to my notes for the migration policy review. No one responded. Not my mother, not Seth, not the HR team. They processed the rejection like any other. It was done. The silence that followed wasn't hollow this time. It was clean. It filled the room like fresh air. For once, I wasn't shrinking beneath their expectations or trying to dodge their disappointment. I was simply standing exactly where I belonged. 2 weeks later, a new investment file appeared in my inbox. A small acquisition. Nothing flashy. But when I scanned the list of shareholder names, one of them made me sit back in my chair. The company was a shell dressed up with recycled branding and half-finished language about urban revitalization. The acquisition team flagged it for its real estate potential, nothing more. I wouldn't have given it a second glance until I saw the list of personal investors attached to the firm's failed bridge round. There it was, near the top, Gerald Voss. And just below that, Seth Voss listed as strategic lead and advisor. I stared at the document, rereading the line item that showed how much my father had invested. It was nearly everything: his pension withdrawal, a second mortgage, even a liquidation of bonds I remembered him bragging about at my cousin's wedding. There was a note in the margin: acquisition to proceed. No objections filed. They didn't know. They couldn't have. Not yet. I signed the internal authorization with steady hands. No announcement. No message. No nameplate change. Just a formal ownership transfer and a standard legal notice scheduled to go out with the rest. 30 days. That's what the letter said. 30 days until existing operations ceased, all assets reassessed, all leases reviewed. It was standard language. Impersonal, final. The property tied to the firm's last investment portfolio was a residential unit on Leland Avenue, an old 4-bedroom brownstone they had used as collateral for a community redevelopment loan that never materialized. It had been quietly deeded to my father as temporary holding listed under his name. He had once told me years ago that the house would be Seth's stepping stone, a starter property to flip, build, expand. Something real. I had driven past it once. I remembered the bay window, the ivy curling up the side, the porch light that never quite worked. I'd watched my father standing on the stoop that summer, arms crossed, nodding proudly as Seth paced beside him on a call. Now the deed was mine. I added one line to the notice before signing off. All keys and tenant files must be returned to the new owner's representative by Friday close of business. Then I clicked send, and I waited for them to read the fine print. The invitation hadn't even been addressed to me directly. I'd been copied CC'd on a mass message from my mother with a digital card attached. Join us to celebrate Aiden's 3rd birthday, backyard lunch, catered brunch, family photos at 2. Beneath the pastel balloons and polite script was a note. "We'd love to see you, Linnea, but don't feel obligated. It's mostly family." Mostly family. As if I hadn't been born from her body. As if I hadn't once vacuumed confetti off that same patio after Seth's college graduation while she poured champagne for his friends and called him the pride of our bloodline. I didn't reply, but I didn't ignore it either. That morning, as guests began to arrive with gifts and sunglasses, a black car pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out in a tailored suit, handed the envelope to my father, and left without a word. They opened it on the porch, surrounded by streamers and catered trays. Inside was a single-page mortgage transfer, formal and stamped. Effective immediately, the property at 92 Leland Avenue had been transferred to the ownership of Dr. Linnea Voss. Stapled beneath it was an eviction notice. At the bottom in my handwriting, a short RSVP. Regretfully, I cannot attend the party. I will, however, be arriving next Friday to inspect the property. Please ensure the keys are on the counter. I never heard the silence that followed, but I felt it. My phone rang 7 times that night, 6 voicemails from my mother, a string of texts from my father. Even Seth called his name lighting up on my screen like a ghost I'd already buried. I let it ring, not out of cruelty, but because this wasn't about cruelty anymore. This was about peace, the kind they never gave me, the kind that doesn't require permission or performance, the kind that simply arrives and stays, quiet, deliberate, immovable. The following week, I arrived at the house with a lockbox and a clipboard. A property manager met me at the gate. The porch light was off. No one had left a note, but the keys were there just as I'd asked. The house was smaller than I remembered, or maybe I had just outgrown the version of myself that once felt so small inside it. I walked through each room slowly. The living room still smelled faintly of pine cleaner. The same beige sectional sat under the bay window. The dining chairs had new cushions, but the frame was still chipped from when Seth kicked one over during a birthday tantrum. No one had ever fixed it. They just rearranged things to hide the flaw. The walls were covered in frames. Seth at prom, Seth at college Seth with his newborn son. I searched the hallway, then the study. Not a single photo of me. But I didn't feel erased anymore. I stopped in the den where the fireplace stood as the centerpiece. The same mantel where my mother once promised to hang real accomplishments. She had meant awards with job titles, not research fellowships, not thesis medals. From my bag, I pulled the frame I'd had made months ago. A copy of my doctorate diploma, embossed and sealed. Below it, a brass plaque read, "Most likely to fail." I hung it above the mantel without ceremony. There was no applause, no phone held up to take a picture. Just me standing in the house they said I'd never deserve. I took one last walk through the kitchen, checked the back door, then returned to the front. The keys were still on the counter where they had left them. I slid them into my coat pocket, walked outside, and turned the lock behind me, not out of spite, but because the girl who once begged for a seat at the table now owned the table, the chairs, and the roof above it. I moved back to Boston in early spring. The air was still sharp, but the light was changing. I found an apartment on a quiet street near the river, nothing extravagant but full of windows. I furnished it slowly. No rush, no one to impress. The emails started coming again, this time softer. "We're proud of you. Saw your article in the Times, great work. Come by sometime if you're in town." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to explain. They weren't angry anymore, just polite. Like I had become a distant professional contact they couldn't afford to lose. I spent my mornings writing, my afternoons consulting, and my evenings preparing a new keynote for the International Forum on Civic Inheritance. Title ownership and legacy rewriting the inheritance. I wrote it not for them, but for the ones like me, the ones who built homes from cold silence, who grew roots in places no one watered, who turned absence into momentum. I thought of the girl I used to be hunched over scholarship essays while Seth's parties roared downstairs. I thought of the night I stood alone at graduation, and the morning I hung my degree in a house I didn't even want anymore. They said I was too soft for the real world, but the world turned in my hands because I never hardened. I didn't carve my name into anything. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood still until they had no choice but to recognize what wouldn't bend.
The afternoon light slants through my bedroom window, casting familiar shadows across the carpet. Something feels wrong before I even touch the doorknob. My fingers pause, hovering over the brass. Below, my parents' voices drift up from the kitchen, casual conversation punctuated by the clink of silverware against plates. I flip the switch. My computer desk stretches before me, a barren expanse of wood where my custom PC once hummed with life. The monitors, the tablet, the careful arrangement of tools I'd spent 5 years assembling all vanished. The power strip dangles empty, its surge protector light blinking at nothing. The room spins. My phone slips from my grasp, clattering against the hardwood. 5 years of overtime shifts at the grocery store. Every holiday season spent monitoring online sales. Each component researched, price tracked, purchased only when the numbers aligned with my careful budget. $4,200 of sacrifice, assembled by my own hands. Pass the salt, dear? Mom's voice floats up through the floor vent as casual as Sunday dinner. My knuckles whiten against the banister as I descend. One step, another. The stairs have never felt so steep. In the kitchen, Mom spoons pasta onto Dad's plate while Brielle scrolls through her phone, designer sunglasses perched on her head despite the indoor lighting. Where is my computer? The words scrape past my lips, unnaturally calm. Mom's spoon pauses mid-scoop. Oh, honey, we sold it. Brielle needed help with her fashion internship interview in New York. Dad doesn't look up from his newspaper. It was just sitting there most days anyway. Brielle's thumbs continue their dance across her phone screen. Thanks for understanding, Cam. You're always so good about these things. Understanding. The word echoes in my head as memories flash past. 16 years old, working my first job, learning to build websites between grocery store shifts. 18, piecing together my dream machine one component at a time. 22, landing my first paid design project on that very system. 24 now, watching 5 years of work vanish from my sister's weekend trip. We got $1,500 for it, Mom adds, as if this detail might soften the blow. Such a blessing, really. Brielle found the perfect bag for her interview. Brielle finally glances up, reaching for her purse. Want to see? It's Valentino. The buyer said your graphics card alone was worth. That wasn't yours to sell. My voice cuts through her chatter, sharper than I've ever allowed it to be. The kitchen falls silent. Mom's spoon clatters against the pot. Dad's newspaper lowers an inch. Camille. Mom's tone shifts, the one that always made me back down, apologize, smooth things over. We're family. We help each other. You've always understood that. Yeah, Cam. Brielle rolls her eyes. It's just a computer. Grow up. Just a computer. Just my livelihood. Just every client file, every project, every hour of work saved to those drives. Just everything I've built, sold without a word. My feet carry me up the stairs before I realize I'm moving. The bedroom door closes behind me, it's slammed, but firmly shut. Through the window, my reflection stares back. The same face that smiled through every family emergency withdrawal from my account. The same eyes that looked away when my credit card returned with mysterious charges. The same shoulders that carried grocery bags, utility bills, endless requests for just a little help. The pattern spreads before me like a blueprint. I wasn't valued. I was a resource to be tapped, a well they assumed would never run dry. My laptop boots up, the screen casting a pale glow across the empty desk. My fingers hover over the keys, then type, how to track down secondhand electronics. The familiar voices continue their dinner conversation below, but something has shifted. In the space where my computer once stood, I see clearly for the first time. They took the machine, but they gave me something far more valuable. They showed me exactly who they are. Later that night in my room, stack of receipts spreads across my bedspread like fallen leaves, each one a testament to overtime shifts and careful budgeting. My hands shake as I arrange them chronological, a paper timeline of sacrifice. The graphics card receipt from Thompson's Electronics still bears a coffee stain from the morning rush before my shift. $300 saved by brown bagging lunches for 4 months straight. My laptop screen casts a harsh glow across the midnight documentation. Every component, every hour worked, every dream built piece by piece. The time-lapse photos tell their own story. My hands connecting cables, installing memory, the triumph in my eyes as the system posted for the first time. $4,200 of determination, assembled in stolen moments between client projects and family obligations. A chat notification pulls my attention to an old conversation thread. My stomach lurches as I spot the date stamp 2 weeks before the sale. Mother's words to the buyers sparkle with false warmth. It's barely used, really. My daughter has so many computers, she won't even notice this one's gone. We can meet Friday afternoon while she's at work. The browser history reveals Brielle's fashion internship interview was scheduled months ago. Her text to mom glows with casual cruelty. Cam can just use the library computers, lol. She's so basic anyway, probably doesn't even need the fancy setup. A receipt for the Valentino bag drops from between folders. $2,300. The math doesn't add up. They sold my system for $1,500. Where did the extra $800 come from? My banking app provides the answer. A withdrawal I never made. Emergency fund transfer, family medical. The same excuse they always use, knowing I never question medical emergencies. The Facebook Marketplace listing appears in my search results, my PC displayed against our living room wall. High-end custom gaming, design PC minus $1,500 firm. Status, sold. The buyer's profile shows a man named Thomas Wheeler, his page filled with tech reviews and computer builds. He'll understand the true value of what he purchased. My fingers hover over the keyboard as I craft the message. Dear Mr. Wheeler, I'm reaching out regarding the custom PC you recently purchased. I'm the original owner and builder. The system was sold without my knowledge or consent. I can provide all original receipts and build documentation. Would you be willing to meet to discuss this situation? His response arrives within minutes. Coffee tomorrow. The situation you're describing sounds concerning. I'd like to hear more. The next morning, sunlight streams through the cafe windows as Thomas examines my documentation. His expression shifts from skepticism to sympathy as the evidence mounts. Look, he says, pushing his untouched coffee aside, I believe you. The specs you've listed match perfectly, and these time-stamped build photos. He pauses, choosing his words carefully. But I paid fair market value. I can't return it without being made whole. My phone buzzes, Morgan calling. I step outside, the morning air sharp in my lungs. They did what? Morgan's voice rises with each detail I share. Cam, that's not normal. That's not family helping family. That's theft. I know. The words catch in my throat. I know that now. Another call beeps through my boss, Patricia. I've never missed a deadline before this week. Camille? Her voice carries none of its usual brisk efficiency. Your mother called the office looking for you. Said something about a family emergency with your computer? She pauses. Want to tell me what's really going on? The story spills out in quiet sentences. Patricia's silence stretches across the line. Take the week, she finally says. Sort this out. Your job will be waiting. Just get yourself stable. I went back to the cafe and told the buyer I would contact him again. I head straight to the bank. 20 minutes later, the bank teller's eyes widened slightly as I requested the withdrawal. $1,500 in crisp hundreds, the last of my savings account. Big plans for this money? She asks, smoothing the bills into an envelope. I'm buying back my freedom. The words surprise me with their certainty. After 30 minutes and withdrawn money, my next call goes to Highland Property Management. Yes, I'd like to ask about your available one-bedroom apartments. Finally, that evening at my home, the PC sits in my room again by sunset, each cable reconnected with trembling fingers. Footsteps on the stairs herald the inevitable commentary. See? Everything worked out fine. Mother's voice carries that familiar note of dismissal. I knew you'd figure something out. You always do. Now you can help Brielle prepare for her interview. Father doesn't look up from his phone. She needs someone to design her portfolio. I don't answer. My focus remains on the monitor as it flickers to life, its soft hum a reminder of everything I've had to reclaim. They don't notice my silence, they never have. Just as they won't notice the lease agreement minimized in my browser or the single box I've begun packing beneath my bed. My phone lights up with Morgan's text. Need my truck this weekend? I start typing a message to my parents, fingers pouring out years of hurt. How could you do this to me? The cursor blinks accusingly until I delete each word. The laptop closes with a soft click. In the darkness, my reflection stares back from the blank screen. The woman in the glass looks different somehow, spine straighter, jaw set with newfound purpose. One box sits ready in the corner, waiting for dawn. The first hint of sunrise bleeds across my bedroom ceiling. Through thin curtains, streetlights still cast their amber glow, creating familiar shadows I won't see again. My phone screen reads 5:47 a.m. Morgan's text waits beneath. Outside when you're ready. Labels cover each box in precise rows. Birth certificate, social security card, bank statements, secured first, tucked into my laptop bag. Portfolio samples and client contracts follow, organized by project date. A photo album surfaces from my bottom drawer. Mom beaming at my high school graduation, Dad's arm around my shoulder at Christmas, Brielle blowing out 16 candles. The cardboard flaps close over those memories. Some weights aren't worth carrying forward. Morgan's truck idles quiet at the curb. Mrs. Henderson peers through her kitchen window next door, coffee mug paused halfway to her lips. Let her watch. Let her tell my mother later. The first box weighs nothing in my arms, lighter than all those years of being the responsible one. You're sure about this? Morgan whispers as we secure my recovered PC in the truck bed. Her breath fogs in the morning chill. More sure than I've ever been. The words come easy, surprising us both. 4 trips empty my room of everything that matters. The bed remains pristine, covers smooth as glass. They'll find it like this when they wake. No note, no dramatic goodbye. Just clean absence, the only language they might finally understand. An hour later, the apartment building hunches small against the morning sky, red brick worn soft by decades of weather. Paint peels in the corners of my new living room, but sunlight streams through uncurtained windows, painting possibilities across bare walls. $840 monthly buys freedom, if you know where to look. Morgan helps position my desk beneath the largest window. My PC finds its place of honor, cables coiled neat and precise. The monitor powers on with a familiar hum. For your new place, Morgan sets a small potted plant on the windowsill. A purple sticky note flags one delicate leaf. Freedom. The first 5 days pass in blessed quiet. I work, sleep, exist in a space that answers only to me. No footsteps overhead tracking my movements. No casual requests that cost hundreds of dollars. No guilt served with dinner. Then my phone erupts. Where are you? Your sister is worried sick. How could you abandon your family like this? Dad's final message lands like a gavel. After everything we've done for you. My thumbs hover over the screen, composing and deleting responses. The words finally settle into place. I've moved out, my things are with me, I am safe and well. Old memories flicker. Decades of subtle manipulation, of being volunteered for sacrifices I never chose. One more line. Please do not contact me for the next 30 days. I need space. The phone rings instantly. For the first time in 24 years, I press decline. Mom's voicemails pile up like autumn leaves. You're killing your father with worry. Each message deleted unheard. Dad's texts land with familiar authority. Under my roof or not, you will answer your mother. Brielle's Instagram story makes her the victim. Thanks for ruining my interview prep with your drama. 300 sympathetic comments bloom beneath. Family friends emerge from the woodwork. Your parents are beside themselves. How could you do this to them? Just call them for heaven's sake. The pressure that once would have crushed me slides off like rain. Do not disturb mode exists for precisely these moments. My recovered PC hums with new purpose. The 3D modeling software opens to a blank canvas, possibilities stretching infinite. My cursor moves with fresh energy, sketching the bones of spaces that breathe. A YouTube channel takes shape, interior design for real life. The first video uploads at midnight. My voice speaks over carefully framed shots of my small apartment. Creating space that works for you. The irony doesn't escape me. 3 weeks of peace shatter with a knock at my door. Through the peephole, Mom's face warps wide with righteous fury. I know you're in there. Neighbors' doors crack open down the hallway. Mrs. Phillips from 4B peers out in her robe. Mr. Rodriguez across the hall stands ready to intervene. The building manager's shoes click up the stairs. Is there a problem here? My voice emerges steady through the door. That's my mother. I'm not receiving visitors. Young lady, you open this door right now. Mom's voice carries down the hallway, but the words have lost their power to compel. I return to my desk, hands trembling slightly as I adjust the lighting on a client's virtual walkthrough. The familiar work settles my pulse. A notification chimes. My first video has hit 1,000 views. A comment catches my eye. This helped me redesign my space after my divorce. Thank you. My reflection in the monitor smiles. Small, genuine, perhaps the first real smile in months. Behind me, the tiny plant from Morgan unfurls a new leaf toward the light. Freedom, it turns out, can grow in the smallest spaces. 3 days after the failed encounter, my phone buzzes with another Facebook notification. Mother's latest post hovers at the top of my feed. Nothing hurts more than watching your child throw away years of family love. Parents, hold your babies close while you can. 43 sympathetic reactions, 12 comments offering prayers and support. I click away before reading more, focusing instead on the design mock-up spread across my monitor. The renovation project needs my full attention, a young couple's first home, their dreams contained in every careful measurement and color choice. A text from Morgan breaks my concentration. Your sister's at it again. Brielle's Instagram story loads with a familiar theatrical flair. Her mascara-stained face fills the frame, designer sunglasses pushed up into perfectly styled hair. My sister abandoned us right before the biggest opportunity of my life. Toxic family, healing, boundaries. The irony of her hashtag choice would be funny if it didn't sting. The phone rings. Aunt Susan's name lights up my screen. Dad's sister, who moved to Seattle years ago. We exchange holiday cards, nothing more. My thumb hovers over decline before something makes me answer. Camille? Her voice carries the same gentle tone I remember from childhood visits. I saw your mother's posts. Something doesn't add up. The words catch in my throat. No one from the family has asked for my side before. What actually happened, Camille? I tell her everything. The computer. The years of financial drain. The pattern of sacrifice disguised as family duty. My voice stays steady, focusing on facts rather than accusations. Silence fills the line when I finish. Then, they did the same thing to me 30 years ago. My hand's still on the keyboard. What? Your father's first business venture. They sold my car while I was away at college, claimed it was gathering dust anyway. I'd paid for it myself, working summers at the pool. She pauses. I haven't trusted them with anything valuable since. The revelation settles into my bones, a family pattern stretching back before my birth. Why didn't you ever say anything? Would you have believed me then? Sometimes people need to discover truth on their own terms. My design channel notification pings. 5,000 subscribers. The number glows on my screen like a beacon. Small but growing. Real. I saw your latest video, Aunt Susan says. The one about building spaces that last. You found your voice. A message from my newest client drops in. A collaboration with Wilson and Reed Design, one of the city's most respected firms. The deposit already cleared enough to cover next month's rent with money left for savings. Another Facebook notification. Dad telling our neighbor I'm going through a phase. The words carry less weight now, harmless as soap bubbles against the solid foundation I'm building. Aunt Susan's voice turns urgent. Listen, there's something else you should know. They're in trouble, but it's not your problem. She outlines the situation. Dad's company planning layoffs. Credit card debt from years of financing Brielle's future. Their retirement account drained for her opportunities. They always assumed you'd be their backup plan, she says. The responsible one who'd step in when things got tight. My stomach clenches. The familiar pull of obligation wars with my newfound clarity. A knock at my door interrupts the call. Through the peephole, I spot Mrs. Henderson from church, clutching her signature glass casserole dish. The neighborhood mediator, right on schedule. Just a moment, I tell Aunt Susan, then open the door. Mrs. Henderson's smile wavers between sympathy and certainty. Your parents are struggling, Camille. They need you now more than ever. 5 months ago, those words would have sent me scrambling to help. Now they land flat against my growing strength. I have some numbers for financial counseling services, I say, reaching for the folder I've prepared for exactly this moment. They offer free consultations and payment plans. Her mouth opens, closes. This isn't the script she expected. But they're your family. Yes, they are. That's why I won't enable patterns that hurt all of us. The casserole dish trembles slightly in her hands. Behind her, my phone lights up with Brielle's latest Instagram story, a tearful announcement that her fashion internship fell through. The caption blames my sabotage and jealousy. I wish her words could still wound me. Instead, I feel only tired clarity. Let her spin her stories. My work speaks for itself in growing subscriber counts, in satisfied clients, in spaces transformed by careful attention to detail and respect for function. Mrs. Henderson accepts the folder, confusion plain on her face. I've never seen you like this, Camille, so. Clear? I suggest. I am, for the first time in my life. After she leaves, I return to Aunt Susan's call. But before I can speak, an email notification catches my eye. Feature request. Budget, friendly design solutions that pop. The irony draws a quiet laugh from my throat. A major design publication wants to showcase my apartment transformation, the very space I was forced to create when they took everything else away. You still there? Aunt Susan asks. Yes. I study my reflection in the monitor, shoulders straight, eyes clear. I'm exactly where I need to be. Good, she says. Sometimes the best foundation is built on stolen ground. I end the call and turn back to my work. The renovation plans glow on my screen, each measurement precise, each element carefully chosen. In the corner, Morgan's plant stretches toward the sunlight, roots growing stronger every day. My mother's Facebook post still hovers at the top of my feed, gathering more sympathetic reactions by the minute. I close the browser without reading the comments. Some spaces are better left empty. The design project before me holds more truth than any social media story. Clean lines, honest materials, form following function. A space rebuilt from scratch, stronger for the breaking. Sometimes, I whisper to my empty apartment, what's taken from you makes room for something better. The cursor blinks, waiting for my next move. Outside my window, the afternoon light paints shadows across my desk different from the ones in my old bedroom, but beautiful in their own right. I begin to work. At the present, the coffee shop windows catch the afternoon sun, casting long rectangles of light across the polished floor. My fingers trace the edge of the manila folder on my lap as I scan the scattered customers. 3 empty tables separate me from the Dora-planned escape route. My parents already wait inside, exactly where I knew they would be. Dad's newspaper shields half his face while Mom arranges and rearranges the sugar packets in their ceramic holder. Brielle slumps beside them, sunglasses perched on her head despite the indoor lighting, thumbs dancing across her phone screen. The familiar sight stops my breath. 3 months of silence stretch between us like a chasm. Thank you for meeting me. My voice carries across the space between us, steady and clear. The words feel foreign in my mouth, not the automatic apology they expect. Mom's hands still over the sugar packets. Camille. She infuses my name with layers of meaning. Relief, accusation, the weight of expectations left unmet. We were starting to think you'd never. Let me speak first. The sugar packets rattle as Mom's hand jerks back. Dad's newspaper lowers an inch. I slide into the empty chair, placing the folder on the table between us. The distance feels both too far and not far enough. I've had time to think. About how you abandoned your family? Brielle's phone clatters onto the table. Do you know what you did to Mom? I know exactly what I did. I open the folder, revealing neat columns of numbers and dates. I also know what you did to me, all of you. Mom leans forward, voice dropping to a whisper that could cut glass. We are your family. Everything we've done has been for this family. Family. The word tastes bitter. Let's talk about family. My finger traces down the first column. Age 16, My first paycheck from the grocery store, $300. You said the electricity was about to be cut off. I believed you. I turned the page. Age 18. $2,000 from my college fund to cover Brielle's dance competition fees. Age 20. My credit card maxed out for Dad's temporary business shortfall. Dad's newspaper crumples. You're keeping score of helping your own family? I'm documenting a pattern. Another page turns. Every sacrifice, every loan that was never repaid. Every time I was told that family comes first, while my own needs came last. After everything we've sacrificed for you, Mom's voice rises sharp enough to draw glances from nearby tables. The ungrateful. My computer. The words slice through her building tirade. $4,000, 5 years of overtime shifts, every client file, every project, my entire livelihood. Sold without my knowledge or consent for $1,500. My gaze locks with Brielle's. How's the Valentino bag working out for those interviews? Brielle's lips curl. Just because you're getting all YouTube famous. This isn't about YouTube. I pull out the final document. 3 clear statements in bold text. This is about boundaries. Going forward, these are my terms. Dad snatches the paper before I can begin reading. Terms, we're your parents, not some business contract. My property and finances are off limits, permanently. I recite from memory as his face darkens. Respect goes both ways. I won't be dismissed or manipulated. Our relationship moves forward with honesty, or not at all. The paper tears in half, then quarters. This isn't how family works. Choose, Camille. Mom's voice trembles. This nonsense or us? She was always weird. Brielle scrolls through her phone again, voice bored. Let her go. Pieces of my carefully typed boundaries scatter across the table like confetti. I gather my bag, movements unhurried despite my thundering heart. You've made your choice. The chair scrapes back. I accept it. Camille Marie Evans. Mom's voice cracks like a whip. If you walk out that door, I'll always care about you. My hand rests on the door handle as I look back one final time. That's why I can't let you use me anymore. Sunlight hits my face as I step onto the sidewalk. The door swings shut behind me, cutting off their voices mid-protest. For a moment I stand motionless, feeling the warmth on my skin, the gentle spring breeze, the weight lifting from my shoulders with each breath. My phone buzzes. A new client inquiry about a kitchen redesign. Simple, practical, exactly the kind of project I love. My fingers hover over the screen, then tap out a response as I walk away from the cafe. Behind me, I imagine Mom gathering the torn pieces of paper, Dad pretending to read his crumpled newspaper, Brielle typing furiously on her phone to shape the narrative of my latest betrayal. But their voices grow fainter with each step, replaced by the sound of my shoes on concrete, the rustle of leaves in the trees overhead, the steady rhythm of my own heart beating out a new pattern. Free, free, free. A year later, the morning sun streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, catching dust motes that dance above my drafting table. My YouTube setup gleams in the corner, proper lighting, a professional microphone, and backdrops I designed myself. A notification pings, another subscriber, bringing the total to 50,012. Morgan breezes through my front door, arms loaded with farmers market flowers. Your place should look perfect for tonight. She arranges sunflowers in a crystal vase, a housewarming gift from a client whose lake house I redesigned. You don't have to fuss, but I smile, watching her work. The apartment has transformed over the past year. Exposed brick walls now showcase my design awards, floating shelves display treasured books and project mock-ups, and Morgan's housewarming plant has spawned a jungle of greenery that makes the space feel alive. My phone buzzes. A text from my latest client. The 3D walkthrough exceeded expectations. Contract signed and deposited. Another milestone for my growing business. Morgan glances at the clock. Guests arrive in 3 hours. Promise you won't spend the whole time working? It's my birthday. I'll celebrate properly. I save the rendering I've been tweaking and close my laptop. The doorbell chimes at 6 sharp. Sarah from the design firm brings wine. Jack from my running group arrives with his famous lasagna. More friends filter in, real ones, who know my worth without testing it. Laughter fills my space, genuine and warm. We crowd around my expandable dining table, a vintage find I restored myself. Stories flow with the wine. No one asks about my family. Until the intercom buzzes. My hand freezes mid-reach for the garlic bread. Were you expecting anyone else? I ask Morgan. She shakes her head, concern creasing her forehead. The letter arrives via building manager cream-colored envelope, mother's precise handwriting. My friends fall silent, watching. They know what today marks. 1 year since I walked away. We miss you, the letter reads. Not we were wrong, or we're sorry. Just missing the convenience of my presence, probably. My fingers trace the familiar loops of her script, remembering a lifetime of carefully crafted guilt. I tuck the envelope into my desk drawer between design sketches and client contracts. Not rejected, not embraced, simply acknowledged and set aside. More wine? Sarah lifts the bottle, and conversations resume. Later that week, I spot Brielle at the design supply store. She's thinner, her designer clothes slightly worn at the edges. We share the same nose, the same height, but everything else feels foreign. Your hair looks nice, she offers, fingers twisting the strap of a knockoff purse. Thanks. I adjust my grip on rolls of wallpaper samples. How's the fashion world? Taking a break. Her voice lacks its old bite. Working at Dad's office, actually, just temporary. We exchange bland pleasantries about the weather. No dramatics, no accusations. Just two adults who used to share a last name, meeting in the paint aisle. The encounter follows me home, a splinter of memory I can't quite shake. I channel it into my next video, creating boundaries that honor everyone. Boundaries aren't walls. I tell my viewers, adjusting the lighting. They're bridges to better relationships. Sometimes the hardest thing is standing still while others learn to cross them properly. Comments pour in. Your videos helped me find courage. Finally learning to say no to toxic family. Thank you for showing it's possible to love from a distance. A publisher's email arrives on a Tuesday morning. They want to book my philosophy of authentic spaces, how environment shapes identity. The advance could fund a down payment on a condo. I print mother's letter, smooth the creases. My response flows easily now, a year of healing between each line. I'm open to building something new, but the old foundation was cracked. You're welcome to meet me here in the life I've created, but I won't return to the role you carved for me. The letter sits ready, not yet sealed, waiting for the moment when sending it will be an invitation, not an obligation. From my balcony, city lights sparkle like fallen stars. My tablet glows with tomorrow's client presentation. The small table holds a cup of chamomile tea, a design magazine featuring my latest project, and the quiet satisfaction of a life-assembled piece by deliberate piece. Morgan's plant stretches toward the glass, leaves unfurling in an endless reach for light. Some roots grow stronger when transplanted. Some bonds strengthen only after breaking. Remember, I tell my viewers in the closing segment, the space around you shapes the person within you. Choose wisely. The camera light blinks off. In the sudden quiet, my reflection smiles back from the window, a woman who finally understands that sometimes the family you need isn't the family you're born to. It's the one you build, room by careful room, until the space fits exactly who you've become.